because I don't know anything. I can't make an apple pie. I have no idea how to do that. Couldn't do it. I don't even know how to turn the oven on. No idea. But I could make an apple pie. How would I be able to do that? Someone gave me a recipe. I'm not going to run into Piggly Wiggly and start buying apples and maple syrup and flour and eggs. Take everything home and start throwing it in a bowl and think I can make an apple pie, can I? What am I going to get? I'm going to get a mess. And in 10 or 20, 15 years, if I keep doing that, I might be able to make an apple pie in about 15 years through all those years of failure. And when I look at people buying plants, a lot of people don't know what to do. So how do you buy plants? Most people buy them on entertainment value. When you go up to a bench and you say, well, I know something about a peony, I know the flower, I know a lot about this. I'll buy a peony. I've seen them, I've grown up with them. But there's some plants on these benches, you might look at them and you might, I don't like anything about you right now. Why would I buy you? And then 6 weeks later, you come back and here's these beautiful flowers. Oh my God, I need 10 of these. 4 weeks earlier, I don't want any part of you. You don't excite me at all. Boom, you're buying 10 of them because of entertainment. But what do you do with the plants you're buying, and how do you put them in a social system of living so they don't create work for you? If you put them together without thinking of how they live and grow together, without growth rate and growth habit from youth to maturity, you're going to be a laborer in the garden. You're not going to be a gardener. And after a while, you're going to say, I think the Dick Van Dyke Show is on right now. I think I'm going to go in the house and watch the Dick Van Dyke Show. I don't really like myself out here. I'm not comfortable with what I'm doing right now because you didn't know how the plants related to each other from youth to maturity. And you just kind of put them in based on aesthetic feeling. And then you had your personal ribbon cutting. Oh, I like everything I did here. And all of a sudden, a month goes by and it's just out of control. Everything's just not the way you want it to be. So we thought, well, how can we contribute and show you the possibilities of gardening by understanding the plant? And not showing you the possibilities like, oh yeah, he showed me all this, you know, someday I'll get to that later. That's a good thing. I really like what he had to say. It's showing you the possibilities right now, making an impact on you right now, making you the gardener you always wanted to be, and you become that gardener right now. Don't take the possibilities home. Yeah, maybe in August I'll think about that. No. Make it now. Make it now. You become the person and gardener you want to be. Don't keep waiting. And with these cards we have, these are just simple recipe cards. They're just made to give you a good start. So you put plants together socially, and then when you watch them grow, it's like if I introduce you to somebody today and you have to spend 4 months with that person. Do you think after the end of 4 months you would know who that person is? Sure you would. You would know how they eat, drink, everything about that person. So when you're around these recipe cards, when you place them and they grow together socially, you're going to come to see who they are, how they live well together, how they grow from youth to maturity, how they're all able to harvest sunlight fairly, one not shading the other out, how they share resources together, also how they attract insects, birds, butterflies, how they attract you emotionally, how they increase your health and well-being, how they stimulate the biology of the soil. All these things you're going to come to know. And you'll remember all those things for the rest of your life. And then you'll say, wow, can I do more of this? Because now you're the joyful gardener. You're not the laborer in the garden anymore. So what I thought I'd do today, we have these grid cards, and the idea too is you photograph them. If you buy the plants and photograph them, you'll have that photograph, and then you can take them and you can combine 3 to 1, 4 to 1. You can create a larger scale. But I would recommend you when you make your garden bigger, you do it at a pace you're comfortable with. Don't try to do too much at one time. Find yourself, say, boy, I get this, I really like this, I kind of get what's going on. And one of the good things I think you're all familiar with are the nature of weeds. All of you are familiar with, you might not know the names of them or how they came to be weeds, because they weren't weeds 4,000 years ago, they were not weeds. They were members of plant communities, mostly through Asia and through Central Europe. That's where agriculture began. And they were once healthy contributors to plant communities. They weren't pests or weeds or things that were intimidating to us. So when you see the plants growing together socially, and you see as they get larger, they start to shade out the ground by a certain date, then you'll notice after that certain date, when the ground is shaded out, I'm not getting much weed competition anymore. Because when the plants knit together socially and reduce the light hitting the soil, weed seeds can't germinate without light. So, and you've probably all seen that like in big hosta beds. There's not a lot of weeding to do in a big hosta bed, and why is that? Because there's no light energy hitting the soil. So you can see how plants can inhibit and restrict and eliminate almost weed competition depending on when the ground is covered fully. So let me show you how I'm taking the grid of the first one there, pollinator garden, first planting pattern, and the two plants on that grid is Allium angulosum summer beauty and Calamintha nepeta subspecies nepeta. Can anybody tell me anything about these plants?
Is that onion and cat?
It's an onion, right?
Yeah. It's for cat.
And cat, yeah. What about them?
They're both edible.
That's good. You can eat them, you can make a drink out of them. How big does the Allium summer beauty get?
18 inches tall. Oh.
Yeah, see? And that's so good. You look things up. After you find your romantic moment, look up the plant and see how it lives and maybe who it's lived with. And when does it reach 18 inches tall? That's the growth rate. In October or in April, it might come out by mid-April, you might see it be 2 inches tall. And then by mid-June, this time of year, if you see it in the garden, it reaches almost 16, 18 inches tall just in foliage. The flowers will be coming up in another week or two. So the growth rate then is from mid-April to mid-June, which might be 8 weeks, 7, 8 weeks. The growth rate of that plant is roughly 16 inches. And it will be that for time eternal. Next year it's not going to be 24 inches or 36. It will be 16 to 17 inches every year unless the conditions the plant is growing in change. If all of a sudden the tree gets bigger and shades it out, or if you somehow put some kind of a excavation in here and water gets closer to the planting, if you change the conditions the plant lives in, then you'll change the growth, the nature of that plant, and it might just decline and die. And okay, so we got a growth rate on that, and then you see on Allium summer beauty, see the flowers down here developing? And that flowering stem will actually get above the foliage, about this high, so the plant will gain another 3 to 4 inches in height. So that little flowering stem, the foliage is up, the flowering stem will grow another 8 to 10 inches, and you'll have a blue golf ball, lavender golf ball flower about that big. And what's a good characteristic about this particular onion?
I don't think it smells bad.
And it only goes where you put it. It doesn't reseed. Most of the alliums can seed frequently and seed everywhere. So this particular onion, where you put it is where it will be. It's not going to give you more work. So that's convenient for a lot of people by not having plants seeding freely right away and inhibiting the growth of other young plants. Okay, and this plant, which plant?
That's going to be 12 to 16 inches.
12 to 6, what's the name of that one?
Well, that's the Catmint.
What's the Latin?
The real name?
Yeah, the real name, see?
Nepeta.
Calamintha nepeta.
There you go.
So this is Calamintha nepeta. Now catmint is a cute common name. You could buy 6 different plants here that are all called catmint. You can only get Allium angulosum summer beauty. This is the only one we have, and the only one. You can go to Italy, South Korea, anywhere in the world, and you will get Allium angulosum summer beauty with that name. If you call it catmint, you probably go to Italy, no one's going to know what you're saying. We don't know what you're talking about. So this name, it's recognized around the world. And that's like you. If you were traveling around the world, you don't change your name to Jimmy Mahoney. You are who you are wherever you go in the world. You are who you are, and you're going to be who you're going to be. So you might have a nickname, but I don't know it, and it's not going to really make any difference to me anyway because I don't know you that well. But your genus and species, first and last name, those are very important to you. So what's the growth habit on this?
It's June through October. It's gonna blossom.
Right, and that's a long time, right? So that's satisfied. That's satisfactory to the people. Go, how long is this going to bloom? That's that entertainment need. I want a plant that's going to tap dance and sing all summer for me. I don't want any restful moments from any plant. Okay, this flowers from late July into October. Okay, how tall does it get?
This one, the height is 12 to 15 inches.
12 to 15 inches. It gets about this high. And when does it reach 12 inches? It doesn't say on the sign.
I don't know.
Well, if you get the book, I tell you in the book, it'll reach 12 inches by early to mid-June. So if you look at, and what's the growth habit of this plant? I don't think it says that either.
Kind of mounding, isn't it?
The growth habit, it's mounding. And the growth habit for Allium Summer Beauty, it looks vertical, but it's kind of mounding too. And it has about the same height. So if they both grow at the same time with the same height, what does that mean about light collection for each plant? They share the light collection very easily. So one plant's not dominating the other. So that way, these are two plants that can live happily, healthy together as long as you have possibilities in the garden. When you run out of possibilities, that's a strong word, isn't it? I'm using that a lot today. But when your garden runs out of possibilities, or you run out of possibilities for your garden, the garden's done for. It's over. But as long as you see a future in your garden for yourself and for the garden you have, my gosh, that garden can be there 40, 50, 60, 70. Well, as long as you're around and handing it off to family and handing it off to people that buy your house, it never has to end, which is cool because you're putting plants in a position where it's not 8 years and you keep replacing everything at an 8 to 7 year cycle. Okay, so let's look at that grid. And basically, let's see how, so with the grid, I took the Allium Summer Beauty, and here's 16 square feet I have right here. And I put one here right in the corner. And then I had two Calamintha, and I'm putting them on 12 to 15 inch centers. And people, Roy, that's way too close. They're going to touch. Well, how many of you want to give up being hugged? Anybody? None of you. Every living thing on earth thrives on intimacy. Everything. There's not a creature on earth that doesn't want intimacy in their lives. And if you look in the temperate zone, or you think that if you've seen a prairie remnant anywhere, where do you see open ground in any prairie remnant? Nowhere. The only open spaces you see in the Midwest from here to Colorado are plowed agricultural fields where light is exposed to soil. It doesn't exist in our temperate zone. Because what happens if light is consistently exposed to bare earth? What happens? And thank God for the weeds. Why are we so thankful for the weeds then? What would happen if we had no weeds? The sun had solarized the earth. There'd be little rovers going around earth wondering where is life if we didn't have weeds. Weeds are healing plants that cover scarred earth and keep the sun from solarizing the earth. So I put two Calaminthas here, and the reason for closeness is because of that opportunity they have to share light. They can knit together quickly, and as long as they can collect light and share light, they'll stay healthy. You don't have to divide them every 2 years, 3 years. They just will live well. But you can divide them. If, say, you want to take an allium and cut it in half and move some alliums over here, you can dig it out, divide it, put a piece back in, and take 3 or 4 divisions somewhere else. And that's the joy of gardening. So then if we look up at the grid again, I got 3 more Summer Beauty, and I put one here, here, and here. So I see I'll have a bigger group of summer beauty here, one going through the middle, big group of summer beauty. The calamintha is white, and in the cooler temperatures, the flower turns blue. So in October, you go from white, clouds of white, to soft blue. It's very attractive. And then this becomes your Monet garden. You have the purple flowers floating above the foliage, the calamintha blooms. And then I had a calamintha here on the corner. There. And I put the other summer beauty right there. We're done. And then you plant those, and we'll plant these in a little bit. And then you have plants that socially live well together. They'll grow into each other from youth to maturity. They'll interact. You'll have the allium blooming in July, followed by the calamintha with the white flowers. When the allium is done flowering, the seed head turns a kind of a brownish yellow, but you don't cut that off because the flowering stems turn bright yellow. And that's a beautiful contrast with the green foliage. The foliage remains rich green. So actually you have a Monet moment all the way into November. You have something healthy for the earth, the soil. You get the bees at the calamintha. And I can't name all the insects that are attracted by the calamintha. And a lot of people at first are scared. They're afraid because there's so many bees here. My children are going to get... You can take your hand and do this. The bees don't care about you. If you grab a bee, you'll have a problem. But if you just wave your hand, they're so busy going from this to that plant to that plant to that flower, they're not going to bother you. So it's actually a wonderful educational tool to show children, young people, all this activity taking place on plants.
Plus all the native bees.
Native bees, the little guys show up. So it's a very educational plant. And the allium summer beauty attracts certain bees too, but not near as many as this. Okay, so that's kind of how, I won't say easy, but the grid it's like the recipe card for me to make an apple pie. I might not make a successful pie 2 or 3 tries with the recipe, but I think with the recipe I could probably, at the end of the day, make an apple pie. I might screw up a few times, but without the recipe card, I don't know what would I do. I have no idea, because I didn't grow up understanding how to cook anything. I appreciate food, but it just isn't something I did. Well, I'll lay out another grid for you. I'm going to walk over here. Now this is a much taller grid. This is Echinacea, it's Purpurea Prairie Splendor. Purple coneflower. Can you come over and read this sign? Yeah, she's very good. We'll have to keep you on board. Yeah. We'll start with the purple coneflower. This is Echinacea. It's called Echinacea Purpurea, and it's a hybrid, seed hybrid called Prairie Splendor.
1 to 2 feet tall.
So it's shorter. It gets about this high. When does it bloom?
It blooms June through the fall.
So it blooms, usually it's got a flower, but it's probably late June, mid-June, depending on the weather. And it'll sporadically bloom into, well, late August. And you get the seed heads of it. So it's more the month of July, late June into early to mid-August. Okay, so we have a short Echinacea. It will get about 24 inches tall to 28 inches. It'll get about this high. And the wild, what about Parthenium?
That is full exposure. It's going to be white flowers. Its height is 24 to 36 inches.
Okay.
June through September.
Now, what's different besides the flower color with this plant and this Echinacea? Height. The Parthenium will get about 6-8 inches taller than the Echinacea will. And Parthenium has these beautiful flat white flowers, and they look like wax. It starts blooming in June, and when the Echinacea is done flowering and develops the seed heads, this is still in bloom. So you have these beautiful flat waxy flowers, and then you'll go from the flower buds to the flowers to the seed heads as this continues to bloom through the summer. So it's a very exciting combination. And the combination is going to be about this high. Go like this. And this combination is going to be about this high. So right away, just by seeing this, if I were to put all these grids in the ground, you could say, oh, I want 2 of the low ones, 1 of the big ones. I want the one that blooms in August over here. You could start putting your grid cards together just by seeing them in the ground. And that's a good thing reserved for winter. Because winter's the time, you're not doing much gardening January 22nd. And that's where you can take all these different grids and put them on a table and start rearranging. Because at that time, your mind, every time you touch something, it goes through your arm into your head. So you keep saying, oh, the Monarda, that's late bloom, early bloom, and you keep rearranging it, and you're putting all these dates together, all these times together, all the flower colors together. And how much does that cost you January 22nd? Maybe a bottle of wine or something. So you spend on a bottle of wine, you just created 1,000 square feet of gardens, and it costs you nothing. And then when you got her point, field adjustments. When you get the plants and start laying it out, then you make field. No, I think I want to shift this one more this way. I want to stretch this one out, so I'm going to put 2 grids here, but I'll make it narrower. You do all your field adjustments at that time, your action time. So let's look at that grid. Okay, on that one I have two echinaceas here at the top. Like that. I put these a little farther apart, and they have a vertical growth habit more than mounding, so these will be more upright than they are mounding. But as they get taller, their foliage will touch by probably the end of the second year. Their foliage will touch by mid-June, because they're just a larger crown of a plant getting this high. And then I had a echinacea in the middle. One here on an angle. And then I had one here. So I put the parthenium. I had 2 parthenium, one in this corner and one in this corner. And I have these on about 15, 18 inch centers instead of the 12 inch. And both of these have vertical growth habits, so they're going to be able to collect light vertically, let sun through, so they'll have sun getting through to the lower foliage. But eventually, as they get older, they won't touch that quickly, but their foliage will touch. The sunlight will be limited going to the ground. That's what's going to shade out the weed seeds. But they have all this foliage at the vertical top of the plant able to collect light, so they stay strong for a long time. They're healthy. But the Echinacea Purpurea has one characteristic it can't get away from. And that's that it's native to woodland edges. So what happens to woodland edges? Where prairie meets shade, what happens there?
There's some shady time.
Shady time. And they migrate. Woodland edges are like a wave hitting an ocean or a beach. There's fire comes in, it takes all the woody plants back. All the woody plants move back in, and what you see sumacs, like if you go into Kettle Moraine, you see all the sumacs coming, and then you'll start to see some of the poplar trees popping up. And then if they burn in the Kettle Moraine, the poplars disappear, the sumacs get burned off, it becomes a grassland. And then the Echinacea Purpurea pops up in the grassland. Then as the sumacs come back out, what happens to the Echinacea Purpurea?
They die.
They get shaded out and disappear. So the Echinacea Purpurea can be short-lived. They can go 8, 10 years. Usually they'll live on a 6 to 8 to 10 year period, but they reseed freely because that's their nature. They have to be like gypsies. They got to keep moving because they don't know when a fire is coming. So they'll reseed heavily. So the dynamics of this garden, compared, both of these plants are sterile. They're only going to go where you put them. This garden, you're going to have the Echinacea seeding. So you have to say to yourself, how am I going to play with the dynamics here? And if you let the Echinacea seed too much, they might start to shade out other plants. So that's where you become the artist in the garden. Just like taking a block of limestone or whatever and sculpting, you take your Dutch push-pull hoe and you hoe out some of the Echinaceas, or you dig them out, pot them up, and use them somewhere else. So that's the joyful part of gardening too. You're always interacting. When you're hoeing, you're not just hoeing to be, again, a laborer. You're hoeing, interpreting relationship. Your hoe, as it glides by every plant, is interpreting what's happening. What's happening with these plants as I go by? You're naming the plants. You're looking at what's my next step. If I have Echinaceas here, I hoe out the Echinaceas. You know what? I think I want to put, if you look at some of the other grids that have maybe Coreopsis in, I want to put Coreopsis right here because it's a little lower. You read the sign, Coreopsis is only 20 inches. I'll put that grid here. And I'll take this one and put it right here, but right in the middle. And over here, I think I'm gonna make my bump out with some nice Nicotia annuals. So you make a nice bump out with annuals right here. You have this here, that there, and you're done. You know what? That's enough for me for this year. I'm happy. I can come out here once a week for 20 minutes with a Dutch push-pull hoe. You can maintain this in less than 8 minutes a week. We take care of about 1,000 square feet in 75 minutes with that hoe. And we're not hunched over, we're just standing up straight, we're moving along, and you go right around the plan. So this would be very limiting to take care of. And then you can be playful too. Maybe you put some annuals in here. Why not put a few little yellow Nicotianas in here and some blue salvia? Your possibilities, it's like, why not is your bumper sticker in life now. That's right on your car, everywhere you go. Why not? Why not? Why not? It's because you're free to do anything you want to do because you've come to know the plants. Boy, when you come to know the plants, it's like, buckle up. You're unstoppable people. If you don't know the plants, it's always, why did that get so big? Why did that reseed everywhere? Well, that's what it does. So there's 2 grids, and we're going to plant these here and keep these here. So when you come back, you can watch how they grow into each other. You can be a witness to their becoming adults. So, well, thank you for hanging out and being a part of it.